Hi, Katie. Thanks for
Hi.
taking the time today to speak with me.
Yes, of course.
I would love to know more about your experience as a clinical social worker with really the early childhood and newborn parenting realm. I love all of your experience. So, to start, I would love to know more about the infant program you did in Boulder.
Yeah, so I worked for the Community Infant Program in Boulder, which is a program that's really, its whole premise is really thinking about early attachment between mom and baby, and even dad and baby, and just primary caregiver and child, pretty much. And so, really thinking about how to set that relationship up for success from the very beginning. So thinking about what is going on in the household that might be causing some stress, or thinking about mom and dad and family's mental health overall, and wanting to really think about, what's going on with them and how to best promote that secure attachment, because we know that, that secure attachment can really be the most important factor for development in general. So both
Yes,
physical, mental, emotional. So yeah.
totally. And I love how you incorporate like the mind, body, spirit. That's something that I have always incorporated into my work, as a postpartum doula, and incorporating like not only the physical, but the mental aspects, the emotional aspects.
Mm.
And so tell me like what you've learned as far as like just your experience as a social worker now, and incorporating those like multi-dimensional, I like to call them, realms into newborn parenthood.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because, parents often think like, oh, okay, if I'm, feeding my baby, or if I'm, it's like the eat, sleep, poop kind of thing around like, okay, this is what babies need. And that's kind of, as long as I'm checking those boxes, I'm good to go. There's this idea of like, oh, they won't, remember anything else. And so I am just going to really focus my energies on those more physical things about being a parent and taking care of my child, when in actuality, we know with a lot of research that that is absolutely not the case, and that mind, body, spirit, kind of having all of those pieces at the healthiest place that they can be, or, obviously we are humans, so that is not all the time possible, and trying as best as we can to think about how our emotional health and spiritual and all of those things impact our little ones, even from the very start in the womb, and how, if we're all that energy and all of those, our stress response system is directly connected to our kiddo stress response system, especially in those, perinatal and postpartum periods of time in that first year of life. We know that kiddos' brains develop like with like 90% of the basic structures are in place, and all those stress response systems. And so kind of that mind, body, spirit connection is so important, because it directly impacts how our kiddos move into the world, with their kind of where their mind, body, and spirit is initially going to be, and how they're going to relate to other people and the world around them. Um, that's why it's so important for, I think, work with parents and little,
Yes,
really think about those pieces all together.
totally. And so what would you like tell a couple that is planning a family or thinking about starting a family? What would be like in this realm of like attachment
Mhm.
theory and mind, body, spirit? What would be like the number one thing that you would want them to know?
Yeah, I think it would just be that parenting is real, can be really procedural if we do not do our own work prior to starting a family. So thinking about how when we, yeah, I think that sometimes it's like, okay, like we feel ready, we'll do this, we'll jump in. And in reality, like there's, maybe some attachment stuff between one of the parents or both parents and their own families, or even each other, that feels a little bit disrupted or ruptured. And so really thinking about how to, think about just the path, how we were parented and how we want to parent and what we want to take from how we were parented and what we don't want to take. Because that really, if you just kind of dive into it without really thinking through some of those pieces or aspects of things, then what can happen is that you can end up just procedurally so procedurally means like you do it without really thinking through it or knowing you're doing it. It's like riding a bike. You do it without thinking about it because it becomes so natural. And that's it. It's the exact same thing with parenting, is that you can really just dive in and do it based on how you were parented, even without knowing that you're doing that. And so I think that for families, when they're starting a family, it can be so important to really think about like, okay, what are my, values and goals and things that are important for me and my family? And then also like, what are some things from my childhood and how I was parented that I want to take with me? And what are some things that I don't, so that I can really be able to break that procedural pattern in the sense of just bringing a little bit more conscious awareness to it, so that it feels more like a choice rather than I just have to kind of enact the same things that my parents did, or my parents' parents. We have a whole intergenerational trauma and attachment that can come in.
I think now we're having a bigger capacity to really look at these things. It's no one's fault, that like our parents parented the way that they knew that their parents is, it's very habitual. And I think there's just an increasing awareness, and with our consciousness expanding, we just have the capacity now to really think about things. And then with the new research coming out about attachment parenting and child development, and so it's really important that we look at these aspects, like you said, before starting a family. And what I do with my conscious conception coaching is really, it's a lot of inventory. So I'm asking a lot of questions like, what are your earliest memories? Where do you think you were held enough as a baby? Really getting them into the subconscious. And now even further, like doing some, I call them games, but they're really NLP techniques, natural linguistic programming, to really go into the subconscious mind. It's almost like a hypnosis, if you will. And so to have that for yourself, but also to be witnessed with your partner, is just so powerful, to take the time together to do that.
Yeah, that can create so much more understanding. And having the partner see kind of you working through that process too. It's so helpful for, I feel like, couples to do this together, because then you can really look at and think about like, oh, that makes sense, that why my partner responds this way, or why they might, attach this way, or what, that can just bring a lot of awareness too for both partners around each other's attachment style and how they relate to the world, and why, because it's like, oh, you weren't, held or comforted, or, even the questions around, with families, I do what's called like the working model questionnaire, which is just like what you were talking about, a lot of questions around like, okay, when you were younger, who took care of you when you were sick? What did that look like? What are the different ways that, how often do you remember being held? Do you remember being cared for? What did that look like? And so all of those things are so important to think about.
Do you have an earliest memory that you want to share?
Yeah, so I definitely, I have my own attachment stuff for sure, so I'm trying to think about an earliest memory. I can remember being like 5 and on a picnic with my sisters in the front yard. And just, I was just a little, I'm the oldest kiddo. So I remember bossing them around, telling them kind of what to do. And then my mom stepping in and being like, you need to be a little bit nicer to your siblings. And like,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so definitely have my own stuff around the want to like be nice or to have a particular
Mm.
way of relating in that, yeah, some of the criticalness and
Mm-hmm.
so from my own mom, but she was also doing the best that she could. And I totally understand why the reaction was that way and
Yeah.
thinking about how that, yeah, that influenced me and
Yeah.
impacted me. Mhm.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're all doing the best we can. I always remind myself of that. Like
Yeah.
especially with my clients and just friends and family, we're all doing the best to our ability. And I think like just uprooting some of these past memories and stories, like within my yoga tradition, it's like we work to separate and detach from the story, because you don't want to just keep it going around spinning,
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, what we're talking about is just bringing more intention to the way you were raised and the way you were parented, and as far as like carrying it over into your own family, because it's so true. Like I've worked with over 100 families as a nanny and a doula, but especially as a nanny in those childcare moments, I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what my mom would be doing or my dad, and for better or for worse, depending on the situation. And so bringing in that mindfulness around it starts with regulating yourself, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
and
100, 1000%. Yeah.
yes, so teaching couples how to do that before they're in that moment and really diving into the visualization of being your optimal self. There's going to be times your children are going to be your biggest teachers, right? Like they're going to teach you and test you to your limit, but giving folks better regulation techniques while going through these past stories and the upraising, super powerful.
Oh yeah. Yes. That's another thing. It's a huge focus for me is just like even the understanding of mindfulness and what it means to be present, like really what
Mm-hmm.
it means to be present and engaged because it's so, yeah, it can be so challenging. And that's what kiddos need the most is for us to be present and totally because they are so emotion brain dominant when they're first born, especially, and they pick up
Mm-hmm.
immediately if we're not, fully engaged or if we're, half there. And so
Right.
being able to help parents to understand what it means to be fully present and mindful of all their actions and intentions and also knowing like there's going to be extreme moments of frustration
Mm-hmm.
and expectations that you're like, oh my gosh, I thought that this was going to go this way and now it's going this way and I am
Mm-hmm.
running off 2 hours of sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
so how to really like be able to have the skills to take care of yourself to the best of your ability. Like no one's perfect and we'll all have
Mm-hmm.
our moments where we react in that moment or whatever. And just being able to have those tools and techniques that are you're like, okay, I know I need to like step into the bathroom for 5 minutes and just put some cold water on my face and do some deep breathing and even like the visualization exercises, just having those to be able to regulate yourself as best as you can so that you can come back and feel that your kiddo could feel that regulating presence from you. And then that
Mm-hmm.
helps both of you to go from here to here. So
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. You said it best with the taking care of yourself,
mhm.
right? And what empowerment that brings when you have these tools before the moment of you're in the kitchen with your 3-year-old and things aren't going the way you planned and you have to be somewhere in 5 minutes and da 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 da, um, so thanks for sharing that. Another experience that stood out was your fellowship that I wanted to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about. I completed a fellowship at Yale University in autism research. So when you told me you completed one in infant mental health, I was like, ooh, that sounds so cool. So I would love to hear your experience with that.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. So yeah, I was there for a year, just really diving into infant mental health research, doing a ton of readings, did a lot of perinatal postpartum work, and yeah, had supervision in addition to that, which was awesome because I was able to get just that additional level of eyes on my work and someone
Right.
to reflect back with me. So yeah, it's really through that fellowship program that I was able to kind of take a deep dive into attachment theory, and also, yeah, thinking about that before even pregnancy happens and during and after. So yeah, that was an incredible, yeah, great experience. And I got to really be alongside of the people that are really at the forefront of doing a lot of this research, which was awesome.
Nice. Yes, I agree. And it's so intense, right? Like the academia
Oh
piece
my
of
gosh.
it.
Yes.
I know that what I learned about myself working in that environment, I mean, there was research and clinic at the Yale Child Study Center, and there was just so many like expectations, right? That your lab has, and like, even that the families bring in about what's going to happen. And it was hard for me to handle all the expectations of academia and research. And I realized that even in that setting, like I was reaching out in the community and babysitting, and I was just finding a lot more joy in the home environment. And so I'm like, okay, how can I take this experience at Yale and like incorporate it into the home? And so I thought perhaps like a home interventionist, and that's what I started doing within families that had children on the autism spectrum. And then I realized that, wait, I want to prevent this scenario. This is really hard to see families struggling day to day with this disorder. And so I went back to younger and younger populations. And when I heard about becoming a doula, postpartum doula, birth doula, realizing it all starts from the very beginning with
Oh
the
yeah.
mother, right? And the partner as well, and how that is the biggest influence on the child's life. So yeah, I love the academia world. I'm so grateful, and still a lifelong researcher and learner, but it's definitely not for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I was like, yes, I want to take this and kind of incorporate it into my work, but definitely the pressure and
Mm-hmm.
the intensity of the academia world, and the bureaucracy and all
Yeah,
the things that go into it too
it was
is, yeah.
very eye-opening, even to look at the research funding, where that's coming from, what those expectations were, what you had to do to get funding. I mean, yeah, a lot of rabbit holes I went down, definitely at Yale, if you can imagine.
Nice. I can believe that. Yeah.
So you also took the training with Postpartum Support International. I've been
Mhm.
considering that, and I have been a member and supported PSI for years, ever since I started Positive Postpartum. And May is Maternal Mental Health Month. So here we are, perfect time to speak about these important health issues that come up. So what did you take away from that training?
Yeah, I think it was just really helpful. I think in my training prior to that, I had been, I'd done a lot of training in like more attachment-based research and infant, kind of like when baby's already here, and some postpartum perinatal. But I think that was just such a great opportunity to take like a deep dive into really thinking about, that work specifically, and all, I don't know, just the struggles and the challenges and the joys and all. I think what I took away most from it is just thinking how every woman has really an individual experience that is their own, and they come with that, their own expectations, their own beliefs of what's going to happen for them, and their own wants and needs and
Totally.
desires. And so it's such an individual journey, and it's so important to bolster women up on all fronts. So thinking about like partner support, thinking about community support, and thinking about how we as women are not made to do this alone. I think that there's this kind of sometimes pressure in our society and culture that we need to be able to do it all. Like we need to be raising our kiddos, working full time, doing everything around the house, and how that really is not what it's supposed to be like, and how there's supposed to be a whole community backing you. And so what that even can look like, you know, when women start to feel like they have to take it all on. And then also thinking about what happens when the expectations and beliefs and desires of what it's going to be like in terms of the birth experience and the process and pregnancy and postpartum don't actually fulfill what the hope or desire might be. And then what it looks like from there. I think that there's just this also belief that like, oh my gosh, my baby's gonna come and then I'm just gonna experience this like amazing joy and love and everything's gonna be beautiful right away. And so sometimes for women, when that doesn't feel like it happens due to maybe a hard birth experience or due to just, you know, this huge expectation, or even nursing, some, you know, not being able to do that right away, or feeling like they failed, and how, you know, I think there needs to be just more awareness and understanding that it's all an experience that can be individual to each person, and that you don't need to follow this like set rules and guidelines around like, when my baby comes out, I'm gonna, you know, that's going to be immediate love, and that it's going to be just like a walk in the park and it's going to be the most joyful time of my life. That kind of incorporating some of those understandings around how challenging it can be too, and how hard it can be, and how much your life changes and your relationship with your partner changes. And, you know, think about baby makes three, like it's no longer just the two of you, and all of that. Yeah.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. I tell my clients that all the underlying like conditions that you need are the same: education, wisdom, support, nutrition, sleep. This is for postpartum. But each family is unique in their own journey. And depending on how even the preconception journey went, you know, how the pregnancy, especially the birth experience. I witness a lot of women that go through trauma. I mean, really, to the body, it's a traumatic event to the body. So if your mind isn't prepared to walk you through it, through the marathon, up the mountain and back down, then you're going to experience hardships from it, especially with the hormone changes of postpartum. And we call it matrescence, right? It's like adolescence on steroids every time you go through postpartum. Yeah. And you really have an opportunity to rewire the brain for joy, love, even in moments of fatigue and stress. You know, you want to really focus on the oxytocin, the dopamine, the serotonin, you know, you want, and really that comes from nutrition and feeling safe and secure in your environment. And so I love how you spoke about just the society and our cultural conditioning, really, you know, that every house has its own little family structure, you know, like we have really lost this sense of community and tribes. And I always like to bring in worldwide traditions into postpartum care, you know, the 40 days, building your village, and helping women and their partners build and reach out to supportive people in the community. Unfortunately, now that we have all this generational traumas trickling down, some people don't feel safe reaching out to their parents or their people in their main circle. So hence why I started Positive Postpartum, to help folks have a positive postpartum. And a positive postpartum starts long before baby's in the arms. So that's why I'm concentrating now on conscious conception and preparing people for those expectations long before baby is in the arms.
Yes. So important.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, as a member of PSI, you know, their thing, right? The advocacy right now is all about sharing your story. So I made sure to put that on my social media, encouraging moms to just share challenges around childbirth and pregnancy and postpartum that they experience, because they say that they did a research study and they said that most women are seeing like all of the happy, positive things that are happening on social media. And so I think social media is a big detriment to newborn motherhood, you
Oh my
know?
gosh. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just bringing more awareness and advocacy towards what's really going on. And I think we can do that, you know, in a way that is non-judgmental and that is sharing vulnerabilities. Perhaps, and some women don't want to put it all out there, you know, but at least in your small circle, like it's so important that you have someone that you can trust, whether it's a therapist, a doula, a coach, a parent, a friend, you know, that you can share the good and the bad. I always ask, who are you going to call when you are having the worst day, you're super fatigued, baby's crying, won't latch on, so many things. You just changed them, got them all comfortable, then they poop. You know, like there's so many moments that are so challenging. And
Yeah.
I ask them, like, who do you have to call? You know, so important.
So important. Yeah, definitely. You know, social media is really tough. So I think it really outlines, yeah, all of the great joys, which is awesome. And really can neglect some of the harder parts, which makes women feel like, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't happening for me, or like, did I do something wrong? I'm so, you know, and those sometimes when those core beliefs are already somewhat in place, like I'm a failure, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it might be.
Yes, exactly. Well, thanks, Katie, for taking this time. I'm so glad that we share the same mission, really, to increase joy and acceptance in newborn parenthood. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great.